Hi, welcome to Muzzle First. Today we're going to clean a Smith Wesson Sigma. This is a model SW9VE. We're just going to disassemble it, clean it, and put it back together. Alright? So the first thing we want to do, we want to make sure it's not loaded. Alright? We're going to eject the magazine and just do a field strip on it real quick here. I do have another video on field stripping the Sigma. It's relatively simple. Alright? Alright. The first thing you're going to want to do is disassemble it. Alright. A couple things that we're going to need here. We're going to need a towel to wipe it down with. We're going to need some patches. We need a cleaning rod. I use this little Pro Shot rod. I really like this rod. It is a stainless steel rod, and there's some drawbacks to that. You have to be careful with a stainless steel rod. Alright. We're going to need a patch holder and a cleaning brush. I prefer to use Hops cleaner. You can use whatever kind that you like. I prefer Hops. And then we're going to use the Hops oil. Alright. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to run a patch to the bore. After you've been to the range, the bore is going to be probably about the worst part. A lot of times the inside your slide, the bolt face here will get pretty nasty too, but your inside the bore is going to be pretty bad. So we're going to start there, alright? I'm just going to take a patch. I'm going to get it wet. And then I'm going to run that patch to the bore, alright? And we're going to run it back and through a couple times, and we're going to let it sit while we do some other stuff, and I'll show you that. Alright, so I'm just going to put that on here. You always want, when using a stainless steel rod, you always want to clean from the bore to the end here. You don't want to go the other direction because you don't want to damage the barrel. So what we're going to do, we're just going to go back and forth a couple times. We're going to get the lubricant working, getting the hops working in here real good. It's going to start breaking down all the powder residue and any copper residue that's still in that barrel. Alright? We're going to let that work real quick. While that's working, we're going to wipe down the barrel. You may have to use a couple rags if it's really dirty. Alright? Just wipe everything down. Feed ramp especially, you want to make sure the feed ramp is nice and clean. That feed ramp needs to be smooth if you want flawless performance there at the range. Inside the slide, alright, you want to clean the inside the rails here, where your frame rails are going to slide. You want to clean the bolt face, this little area right here. You want to make sure that you get that rag underneath the ejector, right, the extractor. You want to get all the powder residue. See that? That was just from the under the extractor there. Powder really seems to gather under there. And so we're going to wipe everything down. Alright? Alright. This captive spring, some people don't clean them. I like to just work a little towel. Work a little cleaner down in them, and you can just kind of work it between the springs and just twist it till you get all the way down the length of that spring. You don't have to get the spring perfectly clean. It depends on your level of attention to details here. Some people only spend a couple minutes and get the major parts. I like to spend a few minutes on all of it. There we go. Alright, so one thing that I like to do is take a Q-tip, put a little hops on it, and I like to clean the inside of that frame rails real good. Alright? This is where the frame rails are going to run here. Alright, and you'll see that even after I ran that first one through there, see, I'm still getting some stuff out of there. The longer that hop sits, the longer it'll work. And most cleaners are like that. You let them sit for a little bit and they'll clean more. Alright. So that's pretty good. Alright. Alright, so we're going to switch to the brush. Alright. You want to work the brush just a couple times through here, alright? You don't have to go nuts on it, but you definitely want to try and scrub as much of that powder residue out as you can. One thing I will mention, especially with hops and some of the other cleaners, these brushes are brass. So one of the things that hops does is breaks down copper and brass. So you don't want to dip your brushes in the hops. What'll happen is it'll work, but it'll actually start dissolving your brush. You'll notice after your brushes sit for a while, they'll start turning green. That's your hops working. It's doing its job. It's breaking down your brush. So I don't generally dip my brushes. I don't recommend you do. Run your patch through there that's wet. Run a wet patch through there and use that to get the hops inside the barrel. Alright? That's all we're going to do the brush with. If it doesn't come out real clean after the next step here, we'll put the brush back through it again. But, alright. So I'm going to take another patch through here. Once again, I'm going to put some hops on it. Put a little cleaner on it. I keep saying hops because that's what I'm using. If you're using another cleaner, by all means, don't have to switch for hops. Alright. So now that we've used the brush to break all the heavy stuff loose, we're going to run another patch through it. There we go. Here we go. So we got quite a bit more stuff out of there. Alright, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run a dry one through it. We're going to dry off the inside of the barrel and we're going to see what it looks like. Alright? That looks really good. I don't know if we can get a picture of it here or not, but nice and shiny on the inside. I don't know if you can see that. You can kind of see that. Alright. So for the rest of it, we're just going to wipe it down. I'm not going to scrub the outside of the barrel, any other parts really, other than the inside the barrel is the only thing I'm going to scrub. You can use a brush. You can use a small plastic brush. Toothbrush if you don't have it. If you the gun cleaning brushes look like toothbrushes anyway. And you can actually take a small brush and scrub the inside of it. I've never really found that necessary in most cases. Some cases. 22s most of the time. 22s get really dirty. But most ammo doesn't leave the gun dirty enough that you have to do that. Alright, we're just going to dry the whole inside out. We're just going to work this towel around in here and get all the cleaner off that we put on there. Including that bolt face. You don't want to leave that cleaner on there at bolt face. But remember, that's going to be resting against your ammo. So you don't want to have a bunch of cleaner sitting on there. Alright. Just like we ran a Q-tip through the hard to reach places earlier, I'm going to do the same thing here to dry it. I'm just going to take that Q-tip, I'm just going to force it down in there. Alright, and you see we still got a little bit of stuff out of there. There we go. Got a little bit of stuff out of both those guides there. So if you wanted to, you could run hops through there again. Like I said, depends on your attention to details here. For me, it's functionally clean, so I'm going to take that right there. All right. I'm just going to wipe down the spring. All right. So now we want to pretty much done with the hops. For the frame, I don't generally use a lot of cleaners on the frames. I generally just wipe them down. So we want to make sure, once again, you can use a Q-tip here again if you want. You want to get underneath the frame rails. And you can use cleaner here if you want. It's up to you. I don't generally use cleaner on the frame. But just want to make sure we get all that clean. Q-tips are really handy for these hard to reach spots down in here. And as you can see here, we're pulling quite a bit of stuff out of there. One of the things that you don't need to do is get every little bit of dirt off of here. You can, but you don't need to. There are some key parts that need to be clean. Anything that slides, anything that moves, rubs on each other, needs to be cleaned and oiled. But all right. One thing I also like to do is, there we go. Inside the grip, the channel where the magazine rides, just push a towel through there, because you'll get powder residue that'll fall down around your magazine. All right, that should be pretty good. So now we're going to oil it. Like I said, I do use hops. I like hops. I've had good luck with it, so I generally stick with it. I've used it for long enough that I'm probably not going to change at this point. You never know. Something really good could come along though. Alright, so I am going to oil the inside of the barrel. One thing you need to pay special attention to. I do not use this gun for concealed carry. I don't carry this. If you are going to carry this gun, you might follow that up with a dry patch just to make sure that your barrel's not real wet. Alright, because what will happen is you'll get that extra oil will actually run in there. For me, it's going to go back in the safe until I take it back to the range. So I'm going to leave it a little wet. Alright, so we'll oil and everything. Same rule here. Pretty much anything that slides on something else, you need some oil on it. Alright, we'll use that. One thing that I like to do for small areas for oiling, like inside of the guides inside the frame here, I like to use a small hobby brush. And I'll show you how this works here. Just put a drop of oil on it, and then you can just paint it on right inside the frame rails. There you go. Nice smooth, nice thin coat of oil. It's not running all over the place. I'm not making a huge mess. It's going right where I want it. Alright. You can use a Q-tip. Q-tip works just fine. These little hobby brushes will last a long time. Alright, so your barrel is going to run right in that the end of the slide here. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in there. Alright, and you also want to oil where the spring sits. And anywhere that you see wear, anywhere there's metal on metal contact, where things slide, I'm going to put just a little bit of oil there. After we're done, we're going to wipe off the excess. And one thing I will say this again, if you're carrying this for concealed carry, you're going to want to use a little bit less oil. You may even want to use a different kind of oil. One of the problems with hops is that hops stays wet for quite some time. You might actually want to use an oil that dries. Rim oil is good for that. Rim oil will actually dry and it'll leave a slick coating behind. That is what I use on my concealed carry guns. That is the only place I use rim oil. For something I'm putting back in the safe, like this, I'm going to put some nice oil on it here. Because if it leaks a little oil in the safe, I don't really care so much. Alright. Reassembly. You notice I'm not really oiling my spring here. It doesn't truly need to be oiled. You can put a couple drops in here if you want. But alright, we're going to put the barrel back in the frame. Make sure it's seated all the way against the bolt face there. Got a little piece of fuzz. One of the problems with using Q-tips is you get fuzz that comes off of them. There we go. Put the spring back in. There we go, just like that. And before I completely assemble it, I'm going to do one more thing here. These little rails here on your slide are what it slides on. It's what your frame, these little rails on your frame here is what the slide slides on. I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on those. All right. They don't need a ton of oil, but I do like to put a little bit of oil on them. Like I said, like to anything that metal on metal contact, you're going to want a little bit of oil on there. All right. Let's see if she goes back together. All right. After you work it a couple times, it will any oil that's excess is built up will come out, and just wipe it off. And one thing that you can do, one little spot here that does get kind of dirty is right here behind the trigger. Just take your Q-tip, get down here behind the trigger if you can. You'll get sometimes a little powder residue down in there, lint, just dirt in general. And that's about all there is to it. Function check. And we're good. Magazine back in. Make sure it locks back. That's all there is to it. Cleaned and oiled. Any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you liked the video, let me know and subscribe. Thank you. Have a good day.